They planned a luxury cruise for months. I wasn't invited. Not even told about it. But the day before they left. No backup. No heads up. Used assumptions. It started with an Instagram post I wasn't supposed to see. A smiling boomerang of my cousin's overpacked suitcase with the caption, Cruise Countdown, 79 days. Can't wait. Corazón azul barco almohadilla family trip. I paused. I knew she wasn't going on any cruise solo. I tapped into her story. Then my sisters. Then another cousins. Matching hashtags. Matching cruise shirts. Matching hotel bookings. But no matching message ever sent to me. My name was nowhere, my face nowhere in their slideshow of plans. You don't miss someone from a party invite by accident when it's been coordinated for almost 3 months. And suddenly, it was clear, this wasn't a forgotten text. This was deliberate exclusion. I didn't comment. I didn't like the post or send a passive-aggressive message like, wait, what's this about? No. That would invite fake damage control and overly rehearsed justifications. Instead, I took screenshots. I noted the dates. I started my record silently, because when manipulation happens within family, documentation can be your only defense. The most unbelievable part? I wasn't even angry. Not yet. Used, confirmed. This was no oversight. They planned a family cruise. They had meetings, shopping trips, coordinated bookings, and chose to do all of it without me. And now, I knew exactly where I stood in their emotional budget, invisible when it came to joy, valuable only when it involved labor. Even still, I waited. I didn't confront anyone. I just made peace privately with one fact, they were hiding the trip from me on purpose. What I didn't know, what hadn't hit me yet, was that they weren't ignoring me completely. No, they did remember me. Used not for a vacation. They remembered me for something else. And it was coming very soon. The message came 2 days later. Simple, casual, full of emojis. Exactly how people talk when they don't want to seem selfish but are being very selfish. It read. Hey love. Used a tiny favor grinning face with sweat. Can you take the kids while we're gone next week? We leave Sunday morning. You're honestly the best. Corazón rojo, corazón rojo. That was it. No mention of the cruise. No explanation. No context. Just an assumption. As if they already said yes. Like he'd been involved in the conversation leading up to this, as if they hadn't completely excluded me from every planning detail of this grand family trip they were all so excited about. And now, without a hint of irony, the same people who didn't think I was worth inviting somehow thought I was the most logical person to take care of 4 children, alone, for 6 full days. The message wasn't a question. It was a soft directive disguised as affection. That wasn't a favor. It was an assignment, waiting for me to confirm. I stared at the screen, forcing myself to pause. I knew what I wanted to say. I knew how frustrated I felt. But I also knew the rules, don't respond emotionally. People will use your reaction to discredit your reason. So, I did what Eve learned to do, I let the message sit. I didn't respond. I documented it. Took a screenshot. Noted the time and date. If the situation escalated later, and I had a feeling it would, this would be the first entry in the timeline that proved I wasn't consulted, just expected. In that moment, I made the decision, I wasn't going to engage emotionally. I was going to respond strategically. Because clearly, I wasn't a family when it came to celebration. Only when it came to service. I didn't reply to the message immediately. That moment, when someone makes an assumption and waits for your silence to become agreement, is critical. If you give even an inch emotionally, they'll twist it later. So instead, I went into documentation mode. I screenshotted the original message and saved it to a folder I labeled, Babysitting Assumptions. That may sound tactical, even cold, but I've learned the hard way, when it comes to family conflict, no one remembers how things really happened. They only remember how they felt about it. And feelings are easily distorted. Documents are not. I avoided phone calls. That was intentional. A call leaves no record, just confusion and room for reinterpretation. Mensajes, however, could be referenced. Time stamped. Forwarded. Protected. So I sent something neutral but necessary. Can you confirm the exact dates and times you're asking me to watch the kids? That one sentence did two powerful things. It pushed them to clarify the assumption they were hoping to slide past me, and it reset the boundary. Hadn't they agreed? He was asking for information, not accepting responsibility. Their reply was vague, intentionally so. We fly out super early Sunday and come back Friday night. You can just keep them at your place. We aid you leave car seats and snacks. So be easy. It wasn't a plan. It was a dump and run. No mention of emergencies, school pickups, allergies, bedtime routines, just suitcases and snacks. As if kids were luggage, not living beings with full-time needs. He documented everything again. Screenshots. That is stamps. He even saved the backup to my Google Drive. He wasn't being paranoid. He was preparing. Because when this circus spirals later, I won't be the one scrambling for truth. You already have it, saved, sorted, and solid. After their vague you'll be fine reply, something inside me clicked. This wasn't just inconsiderate anymore, it was irresponsible. Dropping off 4 minors, without a written agreement or clear emergency plans, was more than unfair, it could be dangerous. To them. To me. To everyone involved. If anyone got sick, injured, or even needed basic medical care, who was supposed to approve that? Me. With no legal guardianship? No documents proving I had temporary authority? That's when I decided, I needed legal clarity before this turned into a legally binding disaster. I booked a 15-minute online consult with a local attorney who specializes in family matters. It was cheaper than I expected. And worth every second. Once we started, I didn't give backstory. He went straight to the point. If my relatives leave their children with me for nearly a week with no paperwork, and something happens, that's my liability? The attorney didn't pause. He said, unless there's written, signed consent giving you legal authority as a temporary guardian, you can be held responsible in the event of an emergency, injury, or even a misunderstanding. Do not agree without it. That was it for me. He didn't need drama. He needed protection. This wasn't about being the cool and or scoring family points. It was about protecting myself from the fallout of someone else's irresponsibility. He had now crossed the line from ignored sibling to potential legal scapegoat. When people say family should be there for each other, they usually mean empty obedience without question. But showing up should never cost you legal safety, or your peace of mind. I wasn't saying no to the kids. He was saying no to being handed a loaded situation disguised as a simple favor. So I saved my legal consult receipt too, just in case. The silence didn't last long. Less than 6 hours after I asked for written details and explained I wasn't comfortable without legal documentation, the emotional blitz began. It always starts the same way, with guilt, not logic. My mom called first. He expected it. Her tone was soft, but heavy with disappointment. They're your nieces and nephews, she said. They trust you. It's not right to let them down like this. She didn't ask me how I was doing. She didn't ask what my schedule looked like, or if I was even capable of watching 4 kids alone. The call wasn't about logistics. It was entirely about emotion and perception. Being the good one. Being family. Ignoring the context in service of unity. He took a deep breath before answering. I knew what this was, an emotional trap. If I argued too hard, they'd be cold. If I agreed out of pressure, they'd end up doing something unsafe and unprepared. So I paused and said the truth as calmly as I could. There is a difference between helping out and being handed a responsibility I never agreed to. This wasn't a discussion, it was a setup. She sounded hurt. I just didn't expect this from you, she murmured. And that line was the knife. Not because it was aggressive, but because it was manipulative. It used shame instead of reason. I didn't reply right away. Because it is what I knew without doubt, if I slipped up emotionally, if I even sounded angry, they use it against me later, say I was overreacting or bitter about not being invited. So I said nothing more. He ended the call politely. Then I went back to documenting the communication, every word, every voicemail. Because at that point, protection mattered more than Anjoni's approval. After the guilt calls ended and the silence dragged on, I knew what I had to do. If I left this unanswered, they'd spin my silence into agreement. They end up being painted as unreliable for backing out. So I had to respond, but only once, and with absolute clarity. No room for misinterpretation. No soft wording, no emotional hooks. Used facts. He drafted the message carefully, reading it twice before pressing send. It said, I understand you need support, and I care about the kids. But I wasn't a part of the planning for this trip, wasn't made aware of it until days before, and was not consulted about taking on full-week childcare. On short notice and without a legal agreement, I can't take on that responsibility. I need to formally mark myself as unavailable for this request. Sort. Professional. Clear. He left no opening for debate or guilting. He didn't ask questions. I didn't leave the door halfway open. He just said no, with absolute respect. The response came quickly. Wow. So that's how it's going to be? Followed by, we really didn't think this would be an issue. We trusted you. And again, I stayed silent. Because no matter how they tried to emotionally corner me with trust, intention, or personal history, none of that changed the most important fact, there was no agreement between us. He screenshotted it all. Organized it by date again. Labeled it boundary communication. Not because I expected a lawsuit, but because I wanted peace of mind. This was the part where most people fold. They think saying no makes them the problem. But I didn't feel cruel. For once, I felt clear. And clarity, eBay learned, keeps you sane, when chaos pretends to be family. They showed up anyway. Yes, after I laid out clear boundaries, communicated my unavailability, and documented everything, they still pulled into my driveway Sunday morning, just after 7:30 de la mañana, the minivan engine was running. 4 children in the back. Backpacks. Suitcases. Car seats. No text, no call. They simply arrived, like nothing had been said. Like silence had erased our entire conversation, or overruled it. From my living room window, I watched them get out casually, like we had a scheduled transition. No urgency, no hesitation. Used total assumption. He stayed behind the curtain. My heart wasn't racing, they actually prepared for this exact scenario. He had cereal on the kitchen counter and a robe on, but they already made my mind up, they would not cross my threshold, not even for 1 second. Because the moment I opened that door, they win. The manipulation would be in motion. The kids would shuffle in, they drive off, and they be left cleaning up a disaster I never agreed to. My phone buzzed. A message popped up. Hey. We're here, can you come out and help with the bags? He didn't respond. 5 minutes passed. Another knock at the door. Slightly louder this time. No text with it. Used silence after the knock. And then, eventually, retreat. After what felt like forever but was probably 15 minutes total, I watched their van reverse, pause at the curb, and speed off. Said, grabbed my phone, and did what I always do, I screenshotted the message. Dime, date, everything. He added it to the folder labeled boundary violation. No drama. No reaction. Used proof. Because I already knew what was coming next, not accountability, but escalation. In their eyes, I hadn't missed a favor, they crossed a line. But I wasn't shaken. He was ready. An hour after they drove off, the first wave of messages hit my phone like a small storm. No polite checking in. No acknowledgement that they ignored my refusal. Used straight into outrage. Wow. Can't believe you left us stranded like that. So the kids are just collateral damage because you're having a bad week? Andiel. Pure selfishness. Family don't they treat each other like this? 37 texts. From my sister, her husband, my cousin, and, unsurprisingly, my mom. The tone shifted with each one, passive-aggressive, then guilt-ridden, and finally accusatory. No one mentioned that I had already declined in writing. No one referenced that they showed up uninvited. The narrative was rapidly being twisted. And that was exactly why I didn't respond. He opened the messages, let them sit. Then I took screenshots of the entire thread, every single comment, timestamped, archived in the same folder. They learned from past experience, don't defend yourself emotionally, it only gives them ammo. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to fire back so they could point fingers and say, see? She's just angry because she wasn't invited. But I wasn't emotional, I was strategic. He wasn't even hurt at this point. He was just documenting. Because now it wasn't just about boundaries being ignored, it was about character assassination, disguised as disappointment. He typed one reply. Used when. As stated earlier, I did not agree to this arrangement. I communicated my unavailability and gave you a chance to secure alternative care. I am not responsible for any last-minute outcomes you're facing. That message went out calmly and firmly. Then I turned my phone to silent, face down on the table. I wasn't going to let their chaos become my crisis. I had already said no. And I wasn't going to say it twice. By Monday morning, I thought the worst had passed. The texts had slowed, the silence settled in like a cold draft no one acknowledged. But then I got a call, one I wasn't expecting. It was an automated voice message from the local daycare center. Reminder, child's name will be absent today. If you need to reschedule drop-off or pickup, please contact the center. Excuse me? I had never registered a child at that center. I had no children. I hadn't agreed to watch anyone, much less commit to morning drop-offs and lunchbox duty for the week. Yet there it was, my phone number, clearly entered into their system, as the emergency contact or temporary guardian. I called the daycare to confirm. They said casually, your name was listed as the person responsible during the family's absence, so we logged that in. Is there a scheduling change you'd like to make? I was polite, but direct. I'm not the legal guardian of any child here. I did not submit my consent or availability for this arrangement. Please remove me from any contact or responsibility list moving forward. The staff was understanding, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that my name had ended up on paperwork they never seen. Someone tried to make this binding without my knowledge. If anything had happened, if a child were injured, latte, or missing, and I was listed as the responsible adult, I could be been pulled into chaos I never agreed to. That wasn't just inconsiderate. It was reckless. I followed up with an email to the daycare confirming the removal in writing. Then I added screenshots and call logs to the master folder. Because this wasn't about babysitting anymore. This was liability disguised as obligation. It took me a while to admit it, but this wasn't just about the cruise. Or the kids. Or the last-minute message masked as a favor. This was personal, and it always had been. The more I thought back, the more patterns reappeared. The birthday parties I wasn't invited to. The way group texts would occasionally be forgotten and reappear later with a weak excuse. The tension during family holidays when I didn't follow the unspoken script. This wasn't new. It was inherited. Perfective. I had simply stopped pretending to play along. And now, this, being handed responsibility without respect, wasn't just a one-time miscommunication. It was their final attempt to pull me back into a role they quietly exited a long time ago, the reliable sibling. The backup plan. The one they could ignore and then use without asking, because they knew I wouldn't explode. But this time, I hadn't played along, and now came the punishment phase. Cold shoulders. Needed texts. Social shaming. Manufactured emergencies. This wasn't a parenting crisis. This was family control in disguise. And that realization helped me soften emotionally, but not collapse. It helped me stop expecting logic from people operating from old wounds. Maybe they stopped attending every gathering. Maybe they created a separate life, more peaceful and private. That's not betrayal, it's growth. But what they saw was rebellion. Distance. A threat to the status quo. And in families that rely on hierarchy, independence is offensive. But I didn't owe anyone my silence just to keep the illusion of closeness alive. What they called selfish, I called survival. And this incident, this cruise, this expectation, it wasn't isolated. It was a rerun of a story I stopped watching years ago. This time, I refused to tune back in. By the second day of their vacation, the public shaming campaign began. Not directly, of course, never that honest. It started with a vague Instagram story from my sister. A photo of the cruise ship deck, drinks in hand, and the caption. Nothing hurts more than fake loyalty in a real family. Next came the cousin. She posted a group shot of all of them dining together with. Grateful for the ones who always show up. Even when others bail. Didn't they need my name to be tagged? I was the only one missing. The ghost in the group photo. The one empty seat at every table. This wasn't subtle, it was curated. Intentional. Built to deliver shame without accountability. And it worked for those who didn't know the full story. Friends, extended family members, old neighbors, people began messaging me with "Jikis and are you okay?" messages. Not out of concern, but gossip-fueled curiosity. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to defend myself in public, to get loud, to leak screenshots in a fit of bitterness so they could point and say, see? Angry. Difficult. Overreacting. But I hadn't taken this far to lose my credibility now. So I said nothing. Not online. Not in private groups. Not in Instagram comments or DMs. I took screenshots of every single post, every story, every like from flying monkeys adding fuel to the fire. All of it, which looked like drama to them, was evidence to me. Every vague post was a breadcrumb trail of manipulation. Let them write narratives. He had the receipts. Public lies don't require public correction when your personal peace is intact and fully documented. A few days after the vague posts started circulating online, the unsolicited opinions came rolling in, this time from the extended branches of the family tree. And from another state. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in a year. Even my mother's old friend who follows me on Facebook but hasn't seen me in person since I was 12. Each message carried the same undertone, disappointment wrapped in confusion. It was never framed as, what actually happened. Instead, they led with things like, you know you could be just helped. They trust you with their kids. Sometimes people don't ask the right way, but that don't mean you punish the kids. It didn't they get defensive. It didn't they explain every detail. That's how you end up justifying things to people who are only half listening. Repeating yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you is the fastest path to emotional burnout. Instead, I calmly said the same thing to everyone. I was given zero notice, no legal preparation, and there was no agreement in place. He declined based on care, safety, and principle. That is all. So me backed off. Others clearly still thought I was being dramatic or difficult. He let them think what they wanted. Because it is the thing, people will always take sides based on proximity, not facts. If they talk to the other party more often, that's whose story sticks. And I wasn't interested in fighting for a role I didn't play. He wasn't vindictive. He was simply done explaining boundaries that had already been crossed. Used because a crowd starts watching doesn't mean you owe them a performance. This wasn't a family scandal. It was a personal decision. One I didn't regret, and didn't require consensus on. Silence don't mean guilt. Sometimes, it means freedom. They returned from the cruise exactly 1 week later. No texts. No calls. Not even a half-hearted, hey, we're back. But I knew they were home. You can always tell. The online posts stop. Reality sets in and sure enough, the silence didn't last long. 3 days after their return, I got a call from my sister. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize or explain. She started with accusation, masked in disappointment. The kids were really upset you didn't say goodbye to them. They don't understand why you ignored them. That's when it finally clicked. There would be no ownership. No admittance that boundaries had been crossed, that assumptions were made, or that showing up at Someone's house uninvited with 4 minors and luggage is wildly inappropriate. Instead, they'd just redirect the blame back to me, and worse, filter it through the children. He asked calmly. Did you tell them the whole situation? That you dropped this on me with no notice or discussion? She huffed and deflected. I'm not going to get into that. He just wanted to let you know how the kids felt. Translation, we're moving on, and we've decided you're still the villain. He didn't engage further. He wasn't going to argue over feelings that had been spoon-fed to small children as weapons. That wasn't just manipulation, it was cowardice. Using innocent kids to carry messages adults weren't brave enough to deliver directly. He ended the call politely, then did what I always do, I documented it. Caltime, duration, summary of what was said. Not because I expected this to become legal, but because I needed the record. Denial rewrites itself fast. Proof slows it down. When there is no accountability, detachment isn't cruelty. It's protection. At some point after they came back and resumed life like nothing happened, it hit me, I was still waiting for something they were never going to give. An apology. Not necessarily a grand gesture. Used acknowledgement. A genuine sentence along the lines of, we were wrong to assume. We should be handle things better. But instead, they talked around it. Literally skipped over the discomfort like a paragraph in a book they didn't want to understand. And I had to ask myself, why am I waiting for people to apologize for behavior they don't think was wrong? That was the trap. Holding my peace hostage to their growth. setting an expectation that required them to self-reflect. And the truth was, what they did wasn't they knew. It was just the first time I didn't they go along with it. So in their eyes, I was the one who changed. Not the pattern. Not the entitlement. Used my tolerance for it. So I stopped waiting for their maturity. It was dragging me emotionally into a spiral of analysis, wondering what I did wrong, who said what behind my back, which relative believed me, which one didn't they. That's not living. That's managing a PR crisis that was never mine. So instead, I chose to step completely out of it. I wrote down a firm boundary for myself in my notes app, the same place he'd been keeping documentation. Do not wait for closure from people who gain power from your silence. Mo before bar. They don't need to admit it for you to be free. That became the moment I reclaimed full mental space. No more explaining. No more pacifying. Closure isn't always something you're given. Sometimes, it's something you decide to stop needing. Sometimes, the real victory is not letting yourself lose, even if the other person wins with a lie. If you've ever felt something like this, please let me know in the comments. I read every comment. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. Don't forget to share it with someone close to you, they might need to hear it too. And if you want to hear more such real stories, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.